Welcome to Umstead Garage. We're diving into a quick and easy DIY that's going to save you a ton of money. Replacing the brake pads on this 2013 Nissan Sentra. I'll walk you step by step through the process so you can get the job done safely and confidently. So let's get started. Before we get started on the job, I'm going to walk through a few tools that we might need. Of course, you're going to need a 4-way to take the lug nuts off. I've got this extra long screwdriver, or you can use a pry bar. I've got a small screwdriver, a torque wrench. I've got a couple of socket extensions in case we need them. I have a 14mm socket, and I have a ratchet, a C-clamp. I've got your front brake pads and your rear brake pads, a bottle of anti-seize, some dielectric grease, a light in case we need it, optional pair of rubber gloves. I like to wear these rubber gloves anytime I'm dealing with this anti-seize. It seems to get everywhere. And also, I have a jack to jack the car up, and we got a couple of jack stands because you need to use jack stands anytime you're jacking a vehicle up for safety. All right, the first thing we're going to do is jack the car up, put it on jack stands, and get these tires off. So let's do that right now. All right. I wish it was that easy in real life. Now that we got the car jacked up, we'll start on the front, and I'll take these brake pads off and show you how easy it really is to change the brakes. This doesn't just work with the 2013 Nissan Sentra. It works with various years of this car and other cars. This just gives you a general idea of how easy it really is to change the brake pads. All right, let's get set up, and I'll show you how to get them changed. All right, this is the brake caliper. This is what actually holds the brake pads on these vehicles. To get this loose and to remove it, you have two 14mm bolts. You have one on the top and one directly down here on the bottom. We're going to start on the bottom one. We're going to break it loose, and we're going to take it all the way out. All right, now that I got the bottom bolt all the way out, I'm going to loosen this top bolt. All right, I have the top bolt loosened. I'm not going to take it all the way out. I'm going to take my pry bar that I got, or this large flathead screwdriver, and we're going to stick it in the center hole of this caliper, and we're going to just press the piston back in a little bit. That will allow this caliper to slide up and off of here fairly easy. So I leave one bolt in here so that we can physically swing it up and it holds itself in place, because that way you're not hanging by this brake line. You don't want to hang the weight of this caliper on the brake line. Otherwise, you risk damaging the brake line. So if you leave one intact, it'll sit there and it'll hold itself and it'll be hands-free. So now I'm going to grab my flathead screwdriver, and I'm just going to pop these brake pads, these old ones, off. They should slide out pretty easily. And yeah, these are worn down pretty good. We'll go ahead and take them out and replace them. Along with the brake pads, you also have these clips that go in the top and bottom of the caliper bracket. We're going to go ahead and we have new ones. We're going to go ahead and pop these out so we can replace them with the new ones. We'll get this bottom one removed. It pops up pretty easily. You don't have to worry about damaging these clips as long as your new ones came with your new brake pads. We have those out. The next step is to press this brake piston back in so you can open it up some, because the new brake pads are thicker than the old ones, and that'll allow this to swing back around and go the way it should be. All right, before we push that piston back in, I'm going to go ahead and take the cap off of the brake reservoir so it will allow that fluid to push back up into there without any issues. Just set this somewhere safe to make sure you don't lose it. All right, the next step in the process is going to be removing these two clips that hold the brake pads in place. Your new brake pads should come with new ones, so we'll pop these out. They come out real easy. Just use your little flathead screwdriver. There they go. The next step in the process is to push this piston back open so it can accommodate the thicker brake pads that go in here. So we're going to take one of the old brake pads and we're going to just set it up here. Now I'm going to take this C-clamp and put it directly over the front and back, and I'm just going to slowly close the C-clamp. This is why we opened the cap on the brake reservoir. All right, that should be sufficient. These are the new clips that came with our kit. They're different styles, and the one that has the little wings on the side of it in my right hand, those are the clips that go on the top. So let's get these installed. Just flip it over upside down. They fit right in this channel on each side of this bracket. Should just snap right into place. The next one, flip it upside down and you put it in this groove on the bottom bracket. And there we are. To ensure that these brakes slide the way they're supposed to slide, we're going to remove this pin out of here. It has this rubber on it, and we're going to grease it up. You make sure that you use this dielectric grease or some other silicone-based grease. You don't want to use petroleum-based grease because it can cause this rubber boot to kind of fall apart. All right, we got that inside there lubed up real well. We're going to slide it back into place, and we'll get to the top one shortly. All right, the next step is to get the brake pads installed. You want to make sure that you don't get any grease on this friction side of these brake pads or on your brake rotor. It'll cause your brakes not to work when you need to. I've already installed the rear one. I'll show you how to do the front one. You put the top in first and then just pick up on the bottom and slide it into place. There you have it. Brake pads are installed. All right, so right about now was when my microphone died. So we're going to do a voiceover and walk you through the rest of the steps. All right, we're going to slide the caliper down over the brake pads and get ready to reinstall the bolts that hold it in place. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on these bolts just to make sure that they don't seize up the next time. We're going to get the bottom bolt started. All right, both bolts are in there now, so we're going to start tightening them down. Now I'm going to run them in with a regular socket wrench in that 14mm socket. And the front caliper bolts are at 20 foot-pounds on the torque. And once I get them both snugged down, I am going to use my torque wrench to get them to the right torque specs. Okay, with my torque wrench set at 20 pounds, I will start to torque the bolts to their appropriate specs. We're going to do the top, and then we'll move to the bottom and get both of them torqued down. Once that is complete, we're almost ready to reinstall the tire and wheel. But before we put it on, I'd like to use some anti-seize on the mating surfaces of the brake rotor and just put a dab on the lug nut studs. If you've ever had a wheel get stuck on a rotor before, you'll know why I do this. Saves you a lot of trouble the next time you're going to do anything. Now that we're back here on the rear, they also have 14 millimeter bolts. These, however, are a little bit different. There's a brake hose in the way, so I'm going to opt to use a end wrench instead of a socket. But these bolts, they're not the typical short bolts like you would find on the front brake pads. The slide pin and the caliper bolt itself is all made into one. So we're going to get it knocked out, get it taken loose, and that way we can get our caliper pulled up out of the way. These bolts seem a little more long-winded than the bolts on the front, so it takes a little bit longer to get them completely out. And as you can see, these are a lot longer. They have threads on the back end of them, and they're smooth on the front shank of the bolt. We'll make sure we get these cleaned up and lubricated once we get ready to go back in. We're going to take the pry bar just like we did on the front, and we're going to open that piston up just enough that we can get the caliper to flip up out of the way. There we go. And this caliper, the way this brake line is, it doesn't like to sit there by itself. It wants to fold back down. All right, at this point, it's time to take the brake pads off of the holders. Just pop it off with your screwdriver. They come right out. These brake pads weren't that bad, but we went ahead and had a kit, so we just went in and changed them anyways. We're going to go ahead and take the clips that hold the brake pads in place. We're going to pop them out. They're kind of old and rusty looking, and we have new ones, so we're going to go ahead and get those out of the way. And since this caliper doesn't want to stay set up, I opted to go ahead and just pull the pin and set it up on the top of the rotor assembly there. Just got to make sure that you don't stretch out that hose too bad. And you got to make sure you lubricate that pin when you get ready to go back in with it. And now we have these clips for the rear brake pads. They're slightly different than the front ones. These are exactly the same, the top and the bottom. So it really doesn't matter which one you use, as long as you get them installed correctly. They only go in one way. If you have them skewed a little bit, you'll know when you drive the car because it'll squill a little bit where it hits the rotor. But they're usually pretty easy to pop into place. And now the pads are ready to be installed. I have already installed the inside brake pad off camera to save a little bit of time. But you, just like the front, you just snap it into place and they set nicely. It's time to get those bolt pins lubed up and get them ready to be put back in place. We need to also lube up the rubber that's on there. That way it doesn't get dry rotted and crack out. Once again, you use that dielectric grease or some other silicone based grease that's not petroleum based. Once we get everything lubed up, we'll get it put on there. And I noticed I didn't quite have enough in there to make it adequate. With the top pin lubed up, we can put it into place and get ready to press the piston back in. Now I have a C-clamp and an old brake pad, and we're going to very carefully, just like we did on the front, we're going to press the piston in wide enough. We're going to make it wide enough that we can get it over these new brake pads and slide it into place. Should go in pretty nicely right there. All right, we're going to lubricate this rubber piece, and we're going to get ready to snap it back in before we put the pin back in place. That way we can keep the dust off from the inside of the moisture and the dust from the inside of that pin. Pin's lubed up good, and we're going to go ahead and get it back started. Get ready to tighten everything down. Now that we got the top bolt started and the bottom bolt started, we'll go ahead and tighten down this top bolt. Takes a little bit longer since we're using a regular end wrench. Once we get it ran up, we can try to tighten up on the bottom bolt. All right, now that we got that top one tightened, let's just run that bottom one up, and it's wide open down there. So we can just use a socket wrench to get it ran up tight. It's a little bit quicker. When we get these ran up snug, we're going to go ahead and get a torque wrench and put a torque wrench on them. And the torque specs on the front, they were 20 foot-pounds, but the rear have a different torque spec. So make sure you pay attention to that. It's 32 foot-pounds. So we get this run up, we'll get the torque wrench out, and we will get it torqued right to the right specs. All right, we have our torque wrench out, and it is set to 32 foot-pounds. We're going to tighten it up. Make sure we get the bolts to the right torque spec. It's a little difficult to get this torque wrench in there behind that brake hose, but I managed to get it. All right, so we got the top and bottom torqued in. We're almost ready to put the tire and wheel back on. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put some anti-seize on these mating surfaces. And we're going to go ahead and add a little anti-seize to the lug studs. And then easy as that, brake pads are changed. Thanks for hanging out here at Umstead Garage. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you always catch the next project. And if you've got a question or a story from your own garage, share it in the comments. I'll read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.